So, hello and welcome to Truth You Can Wake Up To. My name's Samuel William, and today is the 10th of December 2011. So, I was in Trafalgar Square today, and looking up at Nelson's column, I felt it was the right time to tell you guys out there a little bit more about Nelson, maybe some things you didn't realise. Now, as with a lot of public figures, I think notably people like Winston Churchill and stuff like that, we have a few war heroes which we like to have statues of in various places, but none are quite like that one of Nelson, right in the centre of the city of Westminster. Now, Nelson is famous for winning the Battle of Trafalgar. That was in 1805. He took the naval fleet off the coast of southwest Spain. It was called Cape Trafalgar, where he was up against the combined fleets of the French and the Spanish Navy. Now, of course, the main Napoleonic Wars, which were going on, were mainly against the French. And the first thing I want to sort of mention about these wars was that in order to have a war, you needed to be able to have access to lots of money. You needed to be able to borrow money at the drop of a hat, and so you could send as many troops and that you needed to any particular place, keep them fed, kept them supplied, and all of that kind of stuff. So, jolly good for us that in the city of London at the time there was a young man called Nathan Rothschild, who was basically starting to control the finances, had a big stake in whether or not the king of the day could borrow any money. And of course, over on the French side, they had another little man who used to organise the loans for the aristocracy. He was called Jacob Rothschild. They just happened to be brothers, one representing each side of the Napoleonic Wars. So, read into that what you will. I think it's pretty simple, if you ask me. Of course, there were five Rothschild brothers that they were called the Five Arrows. That got sent out to different European cities, including Germany, Austria, Paris, France, Paris and London, and I forget the other one. So Nelson, he's very much lauded as our greatest ever naval war hero. He lost his life at the Battle of Trafalgar, which is a great shame for the country. And he had some very interesting last words, did Nelson. His last words were, and I quote, "Well, that's it then, I'm dead." So he was a very personable kind of chap, very much loved by the people. Of course, his legend has gone down in history. But there's something about the Battle of Trafalgar that most people don't realise. When you had war galleons out there, and you're having sort of naval wars, there was a convention, a naval convention, to do with honour and respect for the other side. Now the ships, when they met in battle out on the ocean, had to line up opposite each other. So you had one ship on one side facing one ship on the other, and then a long line. So all of the ships are opposite each other. And they did this for a few reasons. One of the reasons was if one of the sides was losing, you had the ability to retreat, and you could save the lives of your men. And it's like an honourable retreat. 2, it meant that none of your troops were in particular danger of being ganged up on and all sort of losing their lives. So it's a very honourable way and seemed a very fair way, an international war convention to make sure that war was done properly. And of course you've got Nathan over in Britain and Jacob over in France. And these are two guys that wielded tremendous power, tremendous money, and they were basically just playing toy soldiers with each other. It just so happened that at the Battle of Trafalgar, because the French had brought in some Spanish ships as well, the British were pretty much outnumbered. If my memory serves me correct, it was something around 27 ships on our side and about 33 on the French and Spanish. So Nelson knew pretty much that he couldn't do this battle. It was pretty much impossible. So you will learn in history, if you read your history books, that Nelson used some very unorthodox tactics. For unorthodox tactics you can read, he didn't follow naval war convention. And he pulled off our finest ever naval victory without losing a single ship. Now that last bit's just a blatant lie. So instead of lining his ships up opposite the others, he decided to form his ships into like an arrow and just drive them straight into the centre of the line of French and Spanish vessels. This did certain things. It divided the line in the middle and enabled them to surround the two halves and defeat them. But what it also did was that the front ships that were going in Nelson's column, which is exactly what it was called, a column, were totally decimated. You can imagine the line of ships coming into the centre of the others. They were all shooting at the front ones. They were destroyed. Many lives were lost. That is the thing that you will not learn about in history. Also, that Nelson, by flouting international treaty about how to conduct a naval war, instantly became an international war criminal. And of course he lost his life at the end of the battle, so he never sort of had any ramifications. Of course he never would have done. He would have been come back and labelled a hero and all of that kind of stuff. So just an illustration that possibly Nelson wasn't as honourable and as heroic as we might imagine. So I was in central London today, and a rather curious event was going on. I didn't realise before I went today, but it was Santacon. Now, I'd never ever come across this before. All I saw today was lots and lots and lots and lots of people, probably about 700 at least, and they were all in Trafalgar Square, all dressed as Santa Claus and having a merry time, drinking and having a nice time, climbing all over Nelson's column as well, and sort of trying to climb up it, which is fine. And the more I saw of them today, the more kind of confused and concerned I got. First of all, I just thought, it's one of these Facebook things. People just sort of get together. It's like, you know, I've never seen it before, possibly the first year, but you know, quite successful. They then decided to all leave Trafalgar Square all at once, and if you don't know London, I'll explain. Sort of in between Trafalgar Square and Piccadilly Circus, you have a big, long, straight road called Haymarket, which is where they used to have a Haymarket in the 1800s. It's a one-way street. It has 4 lanes, lots and lots and lots of traffic. The people doing Santacon decided to all leave Trafalgar Square all at once, all simultaneously, and walk up the middle of Haymarket with all the traffic coming. And they caused a huge traffic jam. They were walking all in between all of the cars. People were hooting. They were generally being cheerful, but a few things they were throwing things in cars, trying to open people's car doors and all this kind of stuff. I found this quite concerning, just a little. So when I got home, which is a couple of hours ago, I decided to look up Santacon, because on my tube journey home, I decided that Santacon was some kind of psychological operation. I know that sounds extreme, but for anyone who's been following the what they call the Arab uprising, the Arab Spring, hopefully you've got enough nous to realise that something dodgy is going on there. These aren't necessarily spontaneous uprisings, and you only have to really look into the history of a man called Zbigniew Brzezinski, Barack Obama's chief advisor, to see some of the things that he's written and You can make up your own mind. You could also look into the history of the psychological operations done by mainly American military. A lot of it covert, of course. So I had my suspicions about Santacon, as it was known. I should point out I didn't realise it was called Santacon. I just saw lots of Santa Claus people. I looked it up. Turns out it's called Santacon, and it's got the word con at the end, which also already gives it a negative connotation. I also saw it listed as Santarchy, like anarchy, but with Santa. All seems very light-hearted, doesn't it? So you look into the history of Santacon. What is this? Well, it wasn't a particularly spontaneous event. They do have organisers. In fact, the organiser of the one in London was called Don King Santa, which raised my suspicions. Of course, Don King, notorious for, let's just say, having interests on both sides. So that I got a little bit more suspicious after that. I carried on looking. It turns out the very first Santacon was held by a group calling themselves the Cacophony Club, and it was held, which I guess is a nightclub, called the Suicide Club in 1994 in San Francisco. Even more negative connotations. At the very first Santacon, it was basically getting strippers and Santa to mingle, if you know what I mean. Sit on my knee. Oh, yes, I will. What do you want for Christmas? Well, I know what you're thinking. That's essentially what they were doing. And this has turned into a worldwide phenomenon. You can look it up on Google. You can see it's been happening in lots and lots and lots and lots of places. This Santacon, Santarchy, the Santa Rampage, it's sometimes been called. Originally, in the early days, they used to sort of let themselves into places they shouldn't really be. They used to storm places. Originally, party crashing. That's not so bad. Lots of Santas turned up at my party. Oh, well, it's more fun. Did they bring beer? They did. Okay, they can stay. But they also went to sort of public places after that and just pushed the boundaries of what is essentially anarchy. So it didn't have particularly great roots, so to speak. So what we had in London today was like a contemporary version of something that had very anarchic and subversive roots, which still is fine until the sort of blocking up a main road, trying to get in people's cars, throwing stuff at cars. Or get this one, telling naughty Christmas carols. But essentially we had a group of about 700 people, all at once, blocking a main road in central London. Which made me think, well, aren't the police supposed to be at this sort of thing? Where are the police? Don't get me wrong, I didn't really want the police to turn up, but I just kind of thought, well, where are they? There's 700 people blocking a main street in the centre of Westminster, the Royal City. In fact, not very close, about 5 minutes walk from Buckingham Palace, and where Prince Charles lives. Where's the police? Where are the royal guards with swords? Because that would have been a really good picture as well. A royal guard wearing a red jacket with a sword attacking Santa Claus. That would have been great. But they weren't there. Bearing in mind that this took place over about I'd say about a 30-minute period. Around about that, 35 minutes possibly. There was no police. No one anywhere. Not even a whiff of them. And this reminded me of the London riots. Because I think it's pretty well documented now that at the beginning of the London riots, when all those people were rioting, smashing windows, stealing stuff, setting fire to things, the police had been given a stand-down order. Why? Well, a lot of researchers out there are saying they wanted it to happen. They wanted the riots to happen because it's a lovely little device to bring in a few more laws that control the people. It's also a really good device for richer people, slightly richer people, people who think they're better than poorer people, to demonise those poor people and say they're criminals. not because they've necessarily done a crime, but they have criminal mentality. That's certainly what our good friend David Cameron was talking about in the Houses of Parliament when they had the debate. So, I'm not coming to any conclusions here. All I'm saying is, where were the police? Where were the Royal Guards protecting Prince Charles? Who probably wasn't at home. I imagine he's in South Africa or wherever it is they're having the climate conference. So it's a rather strange day, really. And I just wonder, just putting the idea out there that possibly there are some people trying to stir some trouble and maybe practice their skills at how to use Facebook to start anarchic celebrations. With that, I will bid you farewell. I've been Samuel William. This has been Truth You Can Wake Up To on the 10th of December 2011, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow.